You're new to our shores. Let's have a look at from whence you've come. What's happening in the UK?
Well, as people are probably aware, there is quite a lot happening in terms of the Brexit and the decision by the UK to leave Europe. Obviously that has to go through Parliament, and then the UK has to notify the EU that it will be leaving, but I assume that will happen at some point, and then there'll be years of negotiation, and we will see what happens.
What's likely to happen as far as the farmer community is concerned in the UK and Europe?
Most commentators think that because we import quite a lot of our food, so we import more than 30% of our food, and most of that is linked more to the fresh produce sector, that we will see food prices increase for the general consumer, and diets change perhaps for the worse. For the farming community, which is currently part of the EU's Common Agricultural Policy, farmers receive direct income payments under what is called Pillar 1, and rural development environment type payments under Pillar 2. What we think will happen is that over time some of that Pillar 1 money will decline. We think that the UK government will continue to support farmers with some form of Pillar 1 type money. They won't withdraw subsidies immediately like happened here in New Zealand back in the 1980s, but the direct income payments will fall, and we think more money will stay within the rural development environment side of things, so that will still be supported, but we don't know.
We're likely to see people in the UK going back to production of land that's not in production at the moment?
I would think possibly not. There is a reason why it's not in production. It's not competitive to do so. And if we don't have the market for the products, there would be no reason to be producing them.
But you're saying that there's a lot of food being imported?
The food that is imported, quite a lot of it is products that we can't grow ourselves. So we're 100%, for example, self-sufficient in milk. We import a variety of cheese products that we don't produce ourselves, so what we call continental cheeses, for example. In terms of the grain side of things and the sheep, we're again self-sufficient in that to some extent. What we do tend to import is the pig meat from Europe, so whether we'll see an increase in the pig sector, that might be one possibility.
So obviously the new regime, whoever they may be, will obviously be negotiating with the EU countries? Yes,
so there are various scenarios we could look at. In terms of trade with the EU, the initial suggestion is that the EU will not be doing any favours to the UK. So they can have a number of agreements. One of the agreements would give them essentially free trade in sort of labour and capital and that side of things. I think it would be similar to Norway, but there is no free trade in food. A similar situation to Switzerland is some free trade, but again not within the food sector. They could have something similar to the United States, where there is no free trade and they're essentially under the World Trade Organization type agreement. So the trade issue is probably one of the biggest things that whoever is in charge in September has to deal with, and the trade in food is going to be the important one, and the UK will have to negotiate with the European Union on this, and every single member state that is still left in the European Union will have to agree to whatever comes out.
Tricky times, obviously, but does that open the door for New Zealand?
So obviously with the current devaluation of the pound, it does mean for UK exports they are perhaps somewhat cheaper on the market, but for sort of products from New Zealand going the other way, they are slightly more expensive now. So there is potential in terms of negotiating trade, but the initial situation is one of increased costs to the UK consumer of New Zealand products.
Now, where does the little red tractor fit in?
Okay, so the red tractor is essentially a farm assurance tool. So it is saying that food is produced to a certain standard. It's over and above what was the EU hygiene and food safety legislation, and it was a tool for marketing quality assurance to the UK consumer. It can be applied to products outside of the UK. The difference is that if the red tractor also has a UK flag on it, it means that it's produced in the UK or processed in the UK. So there's a little bit of tweaking on whether it is actually UK produced, but there is a sort of marketing of, for example, Scottish beef, Welsh lamb, so they tend to sort of do the devolved administrations in terms of the marketing.
So really, it's a case of watch and see.
It is just a case of watch and see. Interesting times.